Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish with you here for the next hour with the latest in news, notes, information, sports betting updates. We'll go over to spring training baseball to get the very latest there. We'll also talk a ton about some NBA action. We got the All-Star game coming up this weekend. And also former big leaguer Lorenzo Cain will weigh in on everything going on in Kansas City with the Royals. And he also, of course, played with the Milwaukee Brewers as well. So plenty to get to here on our show. For those of you who are watching for the first time, we're on every morning from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on SportsGrid, SportsGrid TV, SportsGrid.com, and of course, streaming all over the world. If you have a brand new television and you're just tuning us in for the first time, you're like, what is this show? Well, sit back, relax, let me know what you think. Hit us up on social media. You can follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Craig Mish. Unfortunately, got to get started with one of the tougher stories to begin with in a long time. My goodness, what have we come to here? If you can't feel comfortable going to a parade to honor your team for winning the Super Bowl. Indeed, that was the case yesterday. Unfortunately, a woman passed away, 22 injured after a shooting at the Chiefs parade yesterday. Of the wounded people, 8 were in immediately life-threatening condition, 22 total, and actually a very fun situation turned deadly. No updates yet as to, the latest health on some of these people. It's being covered on a very big national level. Naturally, we talk a lot of sports betting and sports news, and this, has to go right to the top. So, our prayers are with these people who were injured. In Kansas City police, Stacey Graves had a press conference last night talking about it. I would encourage you to go check it out on social media as well. All right, over to Major League Baseball, pitchers and catchers now all across the country. It is official. Everyone is now in camp. First workouts going on right now. The Baltimore Orioles, even after trading for Corbin Burnes, may need some more help at starting pitching, at least to start the season. One of their great pitchers from last year was announced this morning. Kyle Bradish is headed to the injured list to start the season. He was either their number 2 or number 3 starter. He has reportedly a UCL sprain, according to my friend Rock Kubatko. Remind me, guys, to get Rock on the show, too. He'll come on anytime. The Orioles have a couple of injuries. Also, their prospect Sam Basallo is hurt as well. Felix Bautista, of course, had Tommy John. He's out for the season. Gunnar Henderson a little bit behind, too. So Sarasota, not the prettiest morning to get started with Major League Baseball today. We'll see if the Orioles end up making another deal to help out here. And by the way, when you have a UCL sprain, you have a PRP injection, there's a chance that you can return, and that is what they're hoping. But sometimes this does lead to Tommy John surgery. Naturally, that's not what we are rooting for. Okay, a contract extension and a much deserved one for Steve Spagnuolo. He's going to stay with Andy Reid as the defensive coordinator with the Kansas City Chiefs. As yesterday they said they're going to try and go for a three-peat. That should be no surprise. They're going to try. Also, the 49ers have fired Steve Wilks, their defensive coordinator. What in the world? You get to the Super Bowl, you can't even keep your job anymore in sports. I mean, this is crazy stuff. The Commanders have hired 49ers assistant head coach Anthony Lynn as their run game coordinator. And Daniel Jones, quarterback of the New York Giants, says his recovery from the ACL tear that he had in November is going well. The Giants probably going to bring in somebody else, I would guess, in the offseason to challenge Jones a little bit in training camp would be my guess. Okay, in college basketball, big news in terms of Ohio State University. They've fired their head coach, Chris Holtmann. He was in his 7th season in Columbus. The Buckeyes are 14-13 and in 13th in the Big Ten. Jake Diebler will serve as the interim head coach for the remainder of the season. If Ohio State can get on some insane run in the Big Ten tourney and make the NCAA tournament, then that would be good news for the interim coach because they may make him the head coach. We'll see. The Pac-12 has begun the process of parting ways with their commissioner, George Kaliakov. This comes after 5 schools departed other conferences, and naturally the Pac-12 is trying to pick up the pieces and just continue at this point. Detroit Mercy ends their 27-game losing streak. They were 1-26 on the season. They win 81-66 last night. It was the longest losing streak in Horizon League history. So congratulations to those kids there. I'm sure they're enjoying their day today. My gosh, 0-26. Incredible. Caitlin Clark has a chance tonight to clinch the all-time scoring record, 8 points away. Ticket prices for tonight are about $300 a piece, and certainly the best women's college basketball player probably of all time gonna break the record tonight. All right, in the NBA, let's get to it here. We're approaching the NBA's All-Star break and all of the fun contests this weekend. Las Vegas, after seeing what happened at the Super Bowl, Adam Silver, the commissioner, was asked where Las Vegas is as far as expansion is concerned. And Silver said it's on the list, definitely on our list. Make no mistake about it, Las Vegas is going to have an NBA team soon, but it likely won't happen until after the 2025 season. Trae Young has been fined $35,000 for a gesture at an official in Atlanta's loss to the Chicago Bulls on Monday. This was crazy yesterday. I don't know if you saw this. Tough season for the Pistons gets tougher. Isaiah Stewart, their center, he punched Drew Eubanks, and the Pistons lost 116-100, and they arrested Stewart for the punch. He was given a citation. What in the world's going on with Detroit this year? The Celtics become the third team in NBA history with multiple 50-point wins in a season. Third team in NBA history. The Celtics beat the Nets 136-86. Joe Mazzulla's 100th win as the head coach there. All right, in broadcasting news, the Mad Dog, Christopher Russo, has landed a multi-year deal with ESPN to go along with all the things he does on SiriusXM. He will appear on First Take. Vern Lundquist, longtime broadcaster of the NFL and college football and even the Masters, has announced this is going to be his final Masters broadcast. 83 years old, Vern Lundquist has been at it a long time, but indeed has decided to call it quits. Henry Cejudo has suggested he will retire if he loses at UFC 298 Saturday night. He's going to fight. He's going to fight this weekend in the UFC. He's in the bantamweight division, and Morgan Riley finally got the news after his cross-check, a 5-game suspension, and certainly this will put him out for the next week or so. He was trying to petition this and talk about the suspension, which naturally we knew in the end was going to happen. So that is the very latest on the ice, on the court, on the field, and on the spring training field as well. All right, coming up next, Steph Noh is going to join us. He's back with us here, of course, to break down everything happening in the NBA. We'll go over the slate tonight, highlighted by a couple of games between Golden State and Utah, Minnesota, Portland, Milwaukee, and Memphis. And then we're going to get into the MVP of the All-Star game, talk about the three-point contest, some really fun contributors coming up in that as well. So stay tuned to that, no doubt. Also, about 15 minutes from now, for those of you who are into the business of sports betting, we're going to have Sam McQuillan in. We'll talk a lot about the sports betting license purchased by Penn, and also what's going on around the country for those of you who are playing fantasy sports, otherwise known as like these pick'em games. These are being banned all over the country, state by state. Kansas is the latest one. We'll get into that as well. So don't go away. More NewsWire's coming up here on this Thursday right after this break. Don't go.
A great big that can block shots, a team that can play defense, and seniors that can put the ball in the hole. That's who you bet on. You don't bet on freshmen. You don't bet on teams that don't play defense. There you go.
I mean, you got to run the guy over to call a foul in a tie game in that kind of a spot. That was a bad job by those refs.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Another reason why they wanted the deadline is the number is 7. Those are the tradable first-round picks the New York Knicks have. And that could be something to look out for in the future. Does New York back it up and throw a ton of picks to a team like Dallas, maybe in the future, to get Luka Doncic?
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where the Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Cam. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Steph Noh does a phenomenal job covering the NBA. You can follow him on X at Steph Noh, and we're going to break down some games, talk some All-Star game as well. As great to have you back here on the show, Steph. I know it's been a bit. Thanks for giving us some time here on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, let's start off with the games here because we're not going to have a lot of games to talk about here for a bit with the All-Star game coming up. Let's preview some games, get to the NBA's All-Star game as well. We'll start off tonight. Hard luck season, as you know, Steph, for the Memphis Grizzlies. And, not going to win many games, going to be chasing draft picks at the end of the season. Milwaukee had a tough time the other night against Miami. They're 11-point favorites tonight on the road, and the total is 223.5. But at this point, Steph, what kind of optimism would I have to back Memphis? I know teams with double-digit spreads in the NBA are going to cover every once in a while here because that's just the way it works, but the Grizzlies have plans for next year with Ja being out for the year, don't they?
Yeah, they're definitely looking towards next year. I mean, they have a lot of guys on the roster who are pretty hungry and have some good opportunity. Gigi Jackson has been playing really well for them lately. They just traded for Yuta Watanabe, who's their first guy off the bench now after, not even being able to earn spot minutes on the Suns. So they also have a bunch of guys who you probably have never heard of. Like they're desperate for bodies, just bringing anyone they can from their G League team who is capable of playing. So yeah, it's definitely a mismatch of a roster, but they play hard. A lot of opportunities again. So yeah, you can never really count them out, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so. And tonight, another game where, I think maybe people are surprised with the season that the Utah Jazz has had. Golden State's on the road tonight. They're 2-point favorites. Total is very high tonight, so defense optional. 237.5 tonight in Salt Lake. So who do you like in this matchup?
Well, the Warriors have had a weird season. They started out the year really hot. I think they won 6 of their first 8 games. Then that Draymond Green suspension happened, and they looked pretty bad. They were a sub-500 team. Ever since he's come back, they have started to look a lot better once again. So definitely getting the Warriors at a good point in their season. And on the flip side, the Jazz, they started off their season terribly. They opened 5-14. They turned it around, getting to 500 with this really fun offense to watch where they share the ball a lot, spread the floor with a bunch of shooters. But they made a bunch of trades, getting rid of some pretty key rotation pieces in Kelly Olynyk, Simone Fontecchio, who is one of their starters, and promising rookie Ochai Agbaji. So they've taken a step back. They've lost 3 in a row. They realized that, this is a young team, starting a rookie in Keontae George. I think they're kind of putting winning on the back burner after the trade deadline, trying to see what they have with some of these younger pieces. So with, both the seasons kind of going in opposite directions, I think the Warriors are probably better bet there.
Okay. And then finally tonight, the Minnesota Timberwolves Probably going to have one of their better seasons, Steph, we've seen in a long time. They're huge favorites tonight. 9-point favorites over the Portland Trailblazers, like Memphis, playing for another season not named this one. Total 214.5.
Yeah, again, two teams in very, very different situations. I mean, obviously, the Blazers are looking towards the draft lottery. It's going to be a weak draft, but, they're going to have a top pick in it. DeAndre Ayton has been huge disappointment for them. There have been some reports that, his attitude has not been great. Scoot Henderson also had a pretty rough rookie season. He had just missed a couple games recently with a foot injury. He missed 2 games, but he's had some good games here. He had 30 against the Nuggets last week. These teams actually, interestingly, just played on Tuesday against each other. And the Wolves won 121-109. So the big thing coming into this game is that Anthony Edwards, he's been dealing with this jumper's knee problem for a while. Not sure if he's going to play in this one. It's still kind of up in the air. So obviously, he's going to be the difference maker. But if he goes, the Wolves have won 3 straight. They've been playing pretty well. So, yeah, it just depends on kind of a game time decision there.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so those are the games we're previewing tonight. Let's talk about the All-Star game this week, Steph. They're finally going back to the old format, which I guess as somebody who's watched the NBA forever, I kind of appreciated the old West versus East. I don't know why I guess you got to change it up to kind of make it fun. But they're Sunday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, we're going to see the old East versus West. Reminds me of Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird. Why are the West 3-point favorites in this game? I guess that would be my question. Not that I'm interested in betting on this. I know the NBA's All-Star games usually go over the total, but they placed it so high this year. It used to be like 310, 315. 361 is the total in this game this weekend. But I guess you can explain to me why the West would be favored, because I have no idea.
I guess my best answer is somebody has to be favored. Yeah, I have no idea either. These games can't really predict what's going to happen because the defense is just like totally non-existent. These guys are basically trying to get through the game without getting hurt.
Okay. All right. Quick and easy. All right. The NBA All-Star Game MVP. Let's take a look at the graphic here, and we'll run through the names. Now, LeBron is, always going to be in the picture here because if he has even a decent game, he'll win this thing. 7-1. Giannis is 6-1. Steph Curry 8.5-1. Jason Tatum 9-1. Anthony Edwards is 10-1, and then Damian Lillard pops up here at 10-1 as well. So, Steph, when you look at this, is it just simply about playing a story or playing a narrative? Like if LeBron had a great game, you would give it to him. If Steph Curry had a great game, maybe he would be on the side of it. And, clearly here what I'm looking at is a lot of guys in the West that are at the top here. So who do you like? Do you like anyone going into this?
It's definitely a narrative-driven award. You're certainly right about that. LeBron, if he has a good game, like you said, he's probably going to win. The problem is, I believe he's 39 years old at this point, like 19 or 20 All-Star games for him. So you have to wonder how much he's really going to exert himself, especially because the Lakers really need him. They're struggling to break past this play-in territory range. So, if I had to pick a player, I would probably go with Steph Curry, who has just been on a tear recently. He had a game the other night where he went 6 for 6 from 3, made his first 7 threes. Last night, I don't know if you saw this, there was a viral highlight going around of him hitting a 3-pointer from the tunnel before the game. Just the way that he's been playing recently, he's back to, top 3, top 4 player over the past couple weeks of the season. I would go with him.
Okay. Now, the 3-point contest is going to be highlighted by a player from the home squad, or at least the team that's hosting the event. Tyrese Halliburton has decided to play in the 3-point contest, and you can see FanDuel is on this one because he's plus 440 right there among the favorites, followed by Damian Lillard, Trae Young, Malik Beasley, Jalen Brunson is 7-1, and Karl Anthony Towns actually in there at 7-1 as well. So the fans are going to be cheering on Tyrese Halliburton. It doesn't always work out this way, Steph, but that's who they would like to win. There's no question.
Yeah, I think Halliburton is a decent bet. One thing I like to look at for this contest is pull-up 3-point shooting instead of just straight catch and shoot, because you are, moving a little bit when you're getting the ball off the rack. So Halliburton is a great pull-up 3-point shooter, one of the best in the league. Dame won this contest last year, but he has not been shooting the ball particularly well. It's been kind of a down year as far as 3-point shooting. The guy that I would pick, call me a sucker for the underdog story, is Karl Anthony Towns, just because he has won this contest before previously. I'm kind of surprised to see him with the worst odds here. And, he's having a great season for the Wolves. He's probably, he would say that he's the best shooting big man of all time. I think there's actually some validity to that statement just because he is a good pull-up shooter. Like I mentioned, he's just a good general 3-point shooter. So I think at that price, he's a pretty decent bet.
All right. Well, fair enough, Steph. Enjoy all the festivities this week in Indiana, and we will catch up again soon. Thanks for popping up here on NewsWire, talking some NBA. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Steph Noh. Follow him on social media at Steph Noh. All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick time out here on the show. Coming up next, we got Sam McQuillan talking all about the new deal between Barstool and DraftKings, a partnership that came out of nowhere immediately after the Super Bowl, considering that Barstool had their own sports book not that long ago. Let's talk about that next.
A great big that can block shots, a team that can play defense, and seniors that can put the ball in the hole. That's who you bet on. You don't bet on freshmen. You don't bet on teams that don't play defense. There you go.
I mean, you got to run the guy over to call a foul in a tie game in that kind of a spot. That was a bad job by those refs.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Another reason why they wanted the deadline is the number is 7. Those are the tradable first-round picks the New York Knicks have. And that could be something to look out for in the future. Does New York back it up and throw a ton of picks to a team like Dallas? Maybe in the future, they get Luka Doncic.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where the Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Cam. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Always fun to talk about things that happen after the Super Bowl because, again, sometimes we get these stories that we did not expect. it's almost like a calendar year ends when the NFL season ends. And indeed, that is what happened after the Super Bowl this year, too. Let's bring in Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. And Sam, one of the bigger announcements that was made after the Super Bowl, and I think caught people by surprise because they hit it so well, is that not long after Barstool decided to stop their operations as far as taking bets, they've partnered up here with DraftKings to do a lot of their promotions and advertisers. So I would ask you, did this catch you by surprise?
Yeah, definitely, Craig, in the sense of, Barstool was Barstool Sportsbook just 6 months ago. You wouldn't even think about a universe where Barstool would be partnering with DraftKings or anybody else for that matter. Yeah. Fast forward 6 months after the Super Bowl, all of a sudden, Portnoy is doing free throw competitions with DraftKings branding everywhere, and they're talking about DraftKings as the premier sports book of Barstool. So leads the question, what happened? So basically what happened was Penn, as has been reported, moved on from Barstool about 6 months ago in favor of paying ESPN Bet about $2 billion, or ESPN about $2 billion to do a sports betting venture with them under the name ESPN Bet. And as part of that deal, essentially, Barstool was sold back to Portnoy for $1. Remember, Penn paid about 3 years ago $551 million for it. So took a loss on that. Then as part of that agreement, it was announced that there would be this non-compete clause for Barstool, meaning that, they couldn't partner with any other sports book. Obviously, DraftKings and other sports books are seen as kind of competitors of Penn, even though, Penn really hasn't been competitive with it at all. They've held about a 4% market share under Barstool, and DraftKings has had about 35%. So basically, when the news came out a few weeks ago that there was a rumor this non-compete would actually be over after football season, the end of the Super Bowl, it was really surprising to me, really surprising to the rest of the reporters at LSR and the whole industry, really, that all of a sudden it would only be 6 months and Barstool could now partner. What it really shows us is, one, kind of how desperate or how quickly Penn wanted to move off of Barstool. There had been a lot of regulatory pushback in different states like New York, Massachusetts, over some of the content Barstool has. People concerned that maybe they were promoting problem gambling, things like this Can't Lose Parlay, doing shows in college campuses, was sort of a headache for Penn. It might have impacted their license in New York that they didn't end up getting. And we saw that they, sold it back to Barstool. And now Barstool is in this position where, they're doing their own thing again. They were pretty vocal, or Portnoy is pretty vocal about, the things he couldn't do under Penn and now the things that he can do. So if you're DraftKings, you're kind of like laughing it up, probably, looking at all the money that Penn has spent on Barstool, all the money they've spent on ESPN Bet, and where they are right now. So it was definitely a surprise, but it probably won't be this huge moneymaker for DraftKings. It's pretty much just this positioning thing where, hey, we got your old kind of customer base and are able to make money off of it. And Penn is now focused on ESPN Bet. They haven't really addressed this at all. Right. They actually just reported their earnings today, which was really below expectations, primarily due to having to spend so much on ESPN Bet and promos, more than they anticipated, actually. So moving forward, it's kind of just Barstool's with DraftKings and, Penn is with ESPN now. But it's definitely weird to think about, like, all the people who change hands and the partnerships that change hands in this industry. Once upon a time, Barstool actually was partnered with DraftKings, and now they are again, lo and behold, 6 months after Barstool Sportsbook is no more.
Yeah, and you just alluded to our next discussion here, which is Penn is now involved in New York through, I believe it is WynnBET, that they've been able to sort of take over or absorb. Why did they choose? Do you know, Sam, why they chose WynnBET? Was that they just wanted to get out, or what happened here?
Yeah, really, Penn had no other choice. New York is unique, where there's only 9 licenses up for grabs. Other states like New Jersey, Arizona have unlimited licenses. You just have to pay the state for one. But in New York, the way the law was written, there can only be 9 at one time. You'd have to change the law to add more, which had prevented, sports books like Barstool, sports books like Fanatics, Bet365, that I'm sure would love to be in the largest market in the country. It's prevented them from joining So they bought WynnBET's license. WynnBET had actually been looking to sell this license for some time now. WynnBET, if you know anything about them, they've been getting out of sports betting as quickly as you can. They closed up shop in 8 states last year, and now New York appears to be next on the horizon for them. Once they leave New York, it'll only be 2 states where they're live. So that's obviously not trending well for their online sports betting operation. They've cited the crazy cost associated with customer acquisition in order to compete with the top dogs, which obviously has been felt throughout the industry when you have places like PointsBet closing up shop and others as well. So yeah, essentially there was no other licenses up for grabs. It's pretty funny actually. About a year or 2 ago, Jay Snowden, who is the CEO of Penn, said, "Oh, we don't want to be in New York. Nobody will make money there," alluding to the 51% tax rate in New York, which is a nation high and really has been felt on some of the operators. But that kind of came right after his license was denied. Some people have speculated that maybe it was because of concerns with Barstool. So it is funny now to see them about 2 years later trying to get into the New York market. But he's definitely right that it's been hard to make money. The top 3 operators, DraftKings, BetMGM, and FanDuel, combined for about 80% of the market, which leaves 6 others to have about 20%. And really, Caesars is the only one of those that has significant gains. The rest, including WynnBET, typically combine for 2% maybe on a good month. So that really shows you the landscape that Penn is getting into. But for Penn and ESPN Bet, this is kind of a must-have now that they've invested so much money into the ESPN Bet operation. They're spending a ton on national advertising. They've been vocal. They just had their earnings call today about how launching in a state like New York will help us kind of get more from that national ad spend. It'll basically be realized in the states we don't have a license in. They're only in 17 states right now. So this would be the biggest one. Whether or not it'll actually help them make money long term, that's a different story. They've held about 7% of the market since they launched, which is decent. But to do that in New York is definitely going to be challenging when you think about all the costs associated with it and everyone you're competing with. And then just all the costs for Penn lately. They're going to have to spend to do well in New York. They've committed to $2 billion for ESPN. I think, spent $1 billion on the technology to run the app. And then they also spent $550 million to buy Barstool, which they only got $1 back for. So the costs are definitely adding up. It's going to be a costly year ahead. New York still has to approve the license transfer. So it's not a done deal yet. But I would expect ESPN Bet to launch in New York, probably leading up in the months leading up to football season.
Okay, and let's close it out here with, it seems like every day, Sam, there's a new story about a fantasy operator or a pick'em operator that is being challenged in their games. And now Kansas has joined along the lines here, Underdog Fantasy among some of them. What's the latest there?
Yeah, once again, we're talking about fantasy sports apps getting cracked down on in different states. Story just came out yesterday on Legal Sports Report. It's an exclusive on what's going on in Kansas. Basically, we had this investigation that revealed 6 fantasy sports apps were sent cease and desist letters by the Kansas regulators in the last couple of months, including Underdog Fantasy. Those cease and desists revolved around this memo, which was circulated in Kansas, essentially saying, hey, there's a bunch of fantasy sports apps that we don't really think are sports apps. What they're offering is actually illegal gambling. And we've seen that in states like Florida, New York, Wyoming, Michigan. The list goes on and on. These places that have targeted these apps that offer pick'em games mostly, which are essentially where you create a parlay of different player props. You pick whether, Jalen Brunson is going to go over 2.5 threes, and you combine that with whether or not LeBron James is going to get over under, 8.5 assists or something. And they call that a fantasy sports entry. Some states allow it, but now they've been operating in this place where they've just kind of been operating without getting word on whether that's okay. And now you've seen some states come back and say, hey, you need to leave. So Underdog left. Prize Picks is still there. There's confirmation on who else got these letters. But the pick'em games basically help these companies rise to the top of the fantasy sports app rankings. They're the most downloaded apps in the App Store throughout football season for fantasy. So to see them now getting cracked down on, it's going to be interesting to see how they pivot, what they go to next. Now that they're losing states like Kansas, like New York as well. So it's another interesting development in the fantasy pick'em space.
All right. Before you go, Sam, what are you working on over at LSR? Any updates? Any new stories?
Yeah, we should have another pick'em story out probably today or tomorrow talking about a state I think you know very well. So keep your eye out for that, and what happens there down south.
Yeah, I see the advertisements while I'm driving on the highway and on my phone. It feels like guerrilla marketing with those. Anyway, all right, Sam, have a great week. Thanks again for coming on. Great to catch up.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. Have a good one.
All right, Sam McQuillan joining us here from Legal Sports Report. Coming up next, Ben Stevens is in the house. He's going to preview the NBA's Eastern Conference, the Western Conference, and take a look at the NBA championship odds. And then former big leaguer and World Series champion Lorenzo Cain, my old buddy Lo Cain, is going to join us here on the show. We'll go over everything the Brewers have done in the offseason. We'll talk about the Royals and get his opinion on why there's still so many free agents out there, a guy who knows all about it. So stick with us here on NewsWire. We'll be back in just a short period of time.
A great big that can block shots, a team that can play defense, and seniors that can put the ball in the hole. That's who you bet on. You don't bet on freshmen. You don't bet on teams that don't play defense. There you go.
I mean, you got to run the guy over to call a foul in a tie game in that kind of a spot. That was a bad job by those refs.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Another reason why they wanted the deadline is the number is 7. Those are the tradable first-round picks the New York Knicks have. And that could be something to look out for in the future. Does New York back it up and throw a ton of picks to a team like Dallas? Maybe in the future, they get Luka Doncic.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where these Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Cam. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire. Free agency still going in Major League Baseball. Once upon a time, our next guest was such a coveted free agent. Of course, he won a World Series with the Kansas City Royals. I want to get into that, talk Brewers, talk baseball today. Lorenzo Cain, my old friend, joins us here on the show. Very busy man all the time, workouts, helping out the kids and doing everything in Northwest Florida, Panhandle area. Lo, thanks for coming on the show. Great to catch up with you again. Appreciate you coming on.
All right, no problem, and I appreciate you having me.
All right, so let's get started here, and let's break down everything that's going on in baseball these days right now. I know that, certainly, you've been following it. Why do you think so many free agents still sitting out there right now at this point? It's kind of crazy to me to see such big names, Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery. You played with all these guys, Cody Bellinger too. Is this just like the new normal, you think?
I think so. I think it's a new norm. I had to deal with it as well when I became a free agent. I'm not sure why teams, decide to go this route and waiting, and I don't know, maybe they're kind of putting the pressure on agents and players or whatnot to come down to their number that they would like. But yeah, definitely not a big fan of it. I had to deal with it. It was definitely not a fun process. So but yeah, hopefully teams start to figure things out and get these guys locked up, because it's a ton of great players still out there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And let's start off with the team that you most recently played for in the Milwaukee Brewers. And then we'll go over to your former team, because a lot of going on with Kansas City. But the Brewers, they're always sort of grinding their roster. And, your old buddy Christian Yelich is still there. And there's still a lot of good players there. But Josh Hader, of course, he is no longer. Corbin Burns was just traded in the offseason. And when you saw all the moves the Brewers made, especially also losing their manager and Craig Counsell, what did you think?
Yeah, kind of had a feeling he would go somewhere. But the Cubs were kind of my last my last thought. He would decide to choose there because it's such a big rivalry between the Cubs and Milwaukee. But yeah, hey, but he had to make the move that's best for him, best for his family. So yeah, definitely it's gonna be weird to see him in the Cubs uniform. But hey, it's a business, and that's how things go sometimes. But yeah, as far as Milwaukee, they always find a way to put together a solid team, and I think they're gonna find a way to get it done again this year.
Yeah, they always do. That's a good point. They always do sort of, grind the roster and figure it out. So I'll get to the Super Bowl here in a minute, but let's talk about the place where you won a World Series with the Kansas City Royals. Before I get into the team, they made the announcement earlier this week that a new stadium is going to be built in Kansas City where the Royals are going to play. What did you make of like sort of their renderings or what they're trying to do there? I know that you're a softie for Kauffman, but, as a player, I would imagine new clubhouse, new amenities, and a lot more fun, too.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed Kauffman. Like I say, I thought it was a really, really nice stadium. I had a blast there. It allowed my game to flourish because, it was such a huge outfield. So, speed was my game. So it allowed me to go out there and showcase what I can do in that, that kind of size field. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure a new stadium, for all the players, all the fans, all the teams, is a lot of excitement there, and to be expected. But once things get rolling, I'm sure I'll get an opportunity to go there and visit, and get to check out the new stadium as well once it gets up and done. And I'm actually going down to KC sometime this year as well to go, see the team, see the players, and I think they're trying to put together something for me, so it's going to be nice.
Good to see you back there. I know you meant so much to that community and that team winning the World Series. And, right now, the Royals are one of those teams, Lo, that when I talk to like other players and teams and agents, they're all telling me they're so proud of the Royals for doing everything that they have done in the offseason. And that also includes extending Bobby Witt Jr. I know you're familiar, obviously, with him. That's a big number, right? $288 million to secure a player.
Yeah, Bobby Witt, well deserved. I'm happy for him. I'm happy he got paid. I mean, he's the kind of player that you lock up long term. He's a player that can do a little bit of everything. He's that all around player. He can swing the bat, hit for power, steal bags, play excellent defense. So if they're gonna lock up any player, he's definitely deserving because, like I said, he can do a little bit of everything, and that's the kind of guy you want on your team, and you want that type of presence in your lineup and in your locker room for a long term.
Yeah, definitely so. Okay, so let's go real quick to the Super Bowl. So you're watching it. I want to know what you're thinking here as they go to overtime. And, obviously the new rules are in place. And, Lo, you're rooting for the Chiefs. Obviously, you played in Kansas City. And you see San Francisco say that they want the ball. Now, I don't know why. I guess in that moment, I didn't realize that was the wrong choice. Did you know in that moment that they had made the wrong choice, the 49ers?
No, I initially, personally, I thought, they made the right choice because I assumed that the rules were the exact same throughout the regular season. And then, once I heard the referee say both teams get an opportunity to possess the ball, and, I'm talking to my father-in-law, I'm like, I think if, the 49ers go down here and score, that Kansas City doesn't get the ball back. But then, so I was confused about the whole process until, I found out later on or after the game that, yeah, in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl or whatnot, both teams get an opportunity to possess the ball if the other team scores a touchdown first. So it was all new to me. But, yeah, at the end of the game, I realized that, 49ers had made the wrong choice. But, hey, it all worked out in the end because, as we know, Kansas City found a way to pull it out.
Yeah, and Patrick Mahomes again with another Super Bowl. All right, let's close it out with you, Lo. You played a long time in Major League Baseball. I know the end of your career, you were it was so important for you to get back home and hang out with your family. What do you think the future holds for you? Do you think you'd like to get back in the game, be a coach? I know you're still involved in the game as well, and as you mentioned, you're going to go back to Kansas City. But I think you still have a ton to give. The game could use you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna slowly, ease back into it. But right now, I'm enjoying these boys. I'm actually coaching, all three of my kids. So they're all, I have a 6-year-old, 8-year-old, and 9-year-old, and they're all on different baseball teams. So I'm actually coaching 3 baseball teams at the moment.
Wow.
So yeah, I have a lot going on right now. But as they slowly get older, I'll definitely like to maybe slowly get back in the game in some capacity. But right now, I'm enjoying these boys to the fullest, and we're having a blast.
Yeah, I know you are. Well, listen, you've always made time for me when you were playing, and even now that you're done playing, and I really appreciate you coming on. And I'm with you there. My son's playing ball too, and I'm only playing with one right now. I only got one out there. I can't even imagine having 3. But congrats on all the success, of course, and certainly I'm waiting to see you get back in the game so I can make that announcement one day. Thank you again for coming on NewsWire. Great to catch up.
All right, thanks for having me. You take care, and it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, always great to see you. Lorenzo Cain, 13 seasons in Major League Baseball, World Series champion 2015. And just an awesome guy. I always love chatting with him as well. All right, you know who else I love chatting with? It's my buddy Ben Stevens. Ben has a preview and a futures look at the NBA. He's got the Eastern Conference, he's got the Western Conference, and, of course, the team that he's going to take a look at potentially to win the NBA championship. Here's Ben Stevens from the early line with a futures NBA preview.
Craig, glad to be back with you here on NewsWire. We look at the association all around the NBA and where the odds stack up just a few days ahead of All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis. Biggest picture, first NBA championship odds were the Boston Celtics, Craig, the only team in the NBA with 40 wins, and the C's now have 43 after a 50-point blowout of the Brooklyn Nets just last night. The Boston Celtics, the best record by far in the association, and nearly, Craig, a $2 gap now between the C's and the reigning NBA champion Denver Nuggets, plus 264 Boston. The Nugs, the second best price at plus 440. Now we go to the LA Clippers, plus 550 for the Clips. We have seen a resurgence since the end of November, now firmly into February. The new roster that includes James Harden seems as though the odds are optimistic for a postseason push for this Clippers team, plus 550. The Bucks, the only other team, Craig, with less than a 10-1 price at 6-1. Those are the 4 teams with triple-digit numbers. Craig, before the year, the Suns were one of those 4 teams, part of the Big Four, the shortest prices to win an NBA championship this campaign. But now Phoenix has moved all the way back to 14-1. And how about those New York Knicks on a 4-game slide at the moment, but a tremendous start to 2024. New York now 18-1 to win the NBA championship. So as we keep it rolling around the NBA, we dive even deeper into the Western Conference odds, where Denver still remains the favorites at plus 210, but hot on their heels, the LA Clippers. Again, Craig, the resurgence for Kawhi, Paul George, and everybody in Los Angeles has seen a different look from the odds makers. After James Harden was acquired way back at the start of this season, this number was pretty short but grew longer. Now the shortest we have seen all year at plus 250. The question, Craig, around the Western Conference is the up-and-coming teams, the Timberwolves and the Thunder, the first and second best marks around the West at this moment, and yet Minnesota, third best price, plus 750. OKC tied for that fourth best number alongside Phoenix at 8-1. Now to the Eastern Conference, where the Celtics currently, for the top spot in the East, have a 6-game cushion for that number 1 overall seed. Boston, a very short favorite to win the Eastern Conference Championship at plus 120, over a buck now in front of the Bucks at plus 250. And then we see the rest of the Eastern Conference, where, Craig, for most of this NBA season, Philadelphia had that third best price, the only other team alongside Boston and Milwaukee with a triple-digit number to win the Eastern Conference crown. Now 16-1 for Philly. Cleveland and New York move up, plus 650 for the Knicks, plus 850 for the Cavs. Of course, Craig, part of that movement is because of the serious injury to Joel Embiid. But right now, in every market the Celtics can be a part of, Craig, they have a very large lead in terms of how the odds makers feel. We are approaching the NBA All-Star break, and those are where the odds stack up.
All right, thanks very much, Ben. This weekend here on SportsGrid, our coverage will be our side coverage. So those of you who are watching the All-Star game or the three-point contest, dunk contest, just tuning in here to SportsGrid. Our in-game live programming will give you who they think is going to win all of the contests and all of the odds, of course, on that as well. NBA, by the way, extended All-Star break now for those of you who are like new to this. A few years ago, they decided to not just have the All-Star break this weekend, but also extend it into next week as well. So no NBA at all for the next week or so. Okay, as far as baseball is concerned, as I mentioned, first day of pitchers and catchers reporting is now fully complete, or at least it's happening right now in Florida and Arizona. Let's go over real quick the free agents that are still out there. There's, I think, 40 or 50 impact free agents that are still out there. But here are some of the bigger names. Blake Snell, Cy Young Award winner with the Padres. Jordan Montgomery, World Series champion with the Rangers last year. Cody Bellinger, former MVP, has still yet to sign after that season with the Cubs. Matt Chapman at third base. Tim Anderson, sort of a hitting champion once upon a time, still looking for a contract. JD Martinez still out there as well. Plenty of other names, too. In fact, Adam Duvall, Randall Grichuk, Garrett Cooper. I mean, I could go on and on. There's still a ton of players that are out there, and hopefully they get signed the next week or two. I would think the pitchers got to get in camp. Pitchers and catchers throwing underway. Anyway, all right, we'll take a quick time out here on the show. Coming up next, Spencer Dinwiddie has a very interesting clause in his contract now with the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm going to tell you all about that coming up next, a little bonus that he could potentially get. So stay with us here on SportsGrid. This is NewsWire on this Thursday. And don't forget, join us tomorrow here on the show. Warren Sharp will take an early look at the upcoming NFL draft. We'll also go over the very latest in college basketball as well. And don't forget, Saturday morning, our first fantasy baseball edition of Fantasy Sports Today. So we will be back with more after these brief messages. And don't go away, because more NewsWire is coming up next.
A great big that can block shots, a team that can play defense, and seniors that can put the ball in the hole. That's who you bet on. You don't bet on freshmen. You don't bet on teams that don't play defense. There you go.
I mean, you got to run the guy over to call a foul in a tie game in that kind of a spot. That was a bad job by those refs.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Another reason why they wanted the deadline is the number is 7. Those are the tradable first-round picks the New York Knicks have. And that could be something to look out for in the future. Does New York back it up and throw a ton of picks to a team like Dallas? Maybe in the future, they get Luka Doncic.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where the Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Cam. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire. Spencer Dinwiddie has joined LeBron and AD and the Los Angeles Lakers. He's chasing a championship. Probably a smart move, right, after just basically being dismissed. And in his contract, really interesting, a bonus that was given to him, that if Dinwiddie wins the NBA championship this year, he gets this huge bonus of $1. This is true. Actually negotiated in his contract and said that now that I'm actually on a team that has a chance for the championship, people are like, why the hell would you do $1? But it has more to do with the ties between me and my agent than anything monetary. So it made me think, like, why in the world would this happen? And what could you even get with $1 for a guy who's making millions and millions of dollars? You know what the first thing I thought about is, now people who are streaming may not have saw this movie and they don't even remember, but the first thing that came to mind was Eddie Murphy in Trading Places. I don't know if you guys saw this. I mean, this goes back to the 80s, where the Duke and Duke, they make a bet over, Eddie Murphy being in their company for $1. And Spencer Dinwiddie has basically doubled down on this, because if he wins the championship, he's going to get $1. Now, it's a funny thing. He understood. He did it with him and his agent, and it's cute. And hey, on shows like this, we're talking about it. So I guess mission accomplished, fair to say. All right. That'll do it for the show today. Hey, thanks to Lorenzo Cain for coming on the show. Really appreciate that. Throughout the baseball season, we'll see which fun guests end up coming on NewsWire. We'll try to do our best with that. In addition, also want to thank Sam McQuillan for popping on the show, and also Steph Noh and Ben Stevens for his preview video of the NBA as well. As a reminder, NewsWire rolls on tomorrow, our Friday edition of the show, 11 a.m. Eastern. We're expected to have Warren Sharp back on. We'll talk about some of the things we missed in the Super Bowl. We missed Warren on Monday, so we'll have him on the show tomorrow. And then Saturday morning, myself and Davis Maddock, we have a preview of the upcoming fantasy baseball season, our first time talking baseball on the FST Saturday morning edition. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Scott Farrell back in the house today, 3 o'clock Eastern. I'll see you tomorrow at 11. Enjoy the rest of your night. Remember, it is smarter to be on sports. Have a great night.